because you don't feel like a whole person because you don't have a wife. That shit is wild and whack. Like, because you want a wife, you have to go to another country, delve in colorism and futurism, be a predator, find a partner, so you could come back to the States and feel like a whole man. Hetero patriarchy is disgusting. Like, it's gross. So, passport bros. I have been staying away from the passport bros conversations because I'm gonna be real with y'all. I don't care if men you leave the U.S. because they don't want to marry black women. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, do you? It's usually the cornballs who are leaving and anyway, right? So, wasn't gonna touch this conversation. Also, I did like the video that Kim Forster did on For Harriet, just describing everything that is of passport bros. So if you don't know what a passport bro is, passport bros are black men who are, I don't particularly think it's a movement, but anything black people do and in a collective, people call a movement. So I'll just use that language. Their movement is to get passports and goes to other countries to find wives and partners because black women here are not feminine enough. We don't cook. We have opinions, so on and so forth. I think you get the drift of what I'm saying. So I first started seeing this passport bro stuff on TikTok. I had no idea what the fuck was going on because I literally would see videos with guys dancing with passports. So I'm like, oh, they got a passport. Like, I thought they was happy because they could travel internationally now. I did not know it was because they were looking for wives or whatever the fuck like that. So I kind of was like, I didn't know what was going on. Then I did start to see people talk about it on Twitter more, and I realized what it was. And I wasn't too shocked or appalled by it because sex tourism, and also I think they used to call them mail order brides. I don't know what they call them now. Has been something very common amongst white people for a really long time. Now, I don't say that to say that it is okay for black folks to do it because white people did it, because that's not the case. I think it's all morally and ethically wrong. And just because white people get away with doing something does not mean that I want black people to get away with it too. I'm just saying that to say that that system of exploiting non-American people because the way the power structure is set up. Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think it's horrible. So I don't fuck with it. I'm just reading Julian's comment. YouTube randomly recommended me one of their videos. I cringed a lot. It's not right. And I agree with it. Yeah, it's not right. You're already using a predatory idea about getting a mate. You're already using your power, your privilege as an American person to find a mate, right? It's caveman shit. Basically, it's caveman shit, right? So I left it there. I didn't really have much to say about it. Watch Kim Forster's video on For Harriet. I liked her breakdown of what it is because I like I said, I wasn't quite sure what it is, but also still didn't really have a huge opinion on it. We're just laughing at these black men because like y'all are ridiculous. Like, really? Okay. Then I started thinking further, and I started to realize that a lot of the videos I've seen on TikTok, the videos I've seen on Twitter, and also probably some of the video clips that Kim Forster put in her stream talking about the passport bros. And I noticed something about the women they were picking. And then I realized that this is something big and glaring in the conversation that not no one, maybe someone else is, but I'm not hearing a lot when it comes to this passport conversation. And it is that a lot of these men are leaving the States so they can access lighter skinned people, so they can have access to colorism in ways that they are not able to access here, right? So what I mean by that is, one, a lot of the countries that they are going to are countries that I'm talking on a basic level, American people don't even realize black people are there, right? So I'm like, I would say somebody like Dominican Republic or Brazil. These are places with large black populations. But for some reason, when people think of these places, they don't think of blackness, right? So that's what I mean by that. They're not going to West Africa, they're not going to these places where for sure, if you don't have a basic geographic mind, for sure that there are, black people. So that's That was the first thing that stuck out. Then the other thing that stuck out, and I will talk specifically about a country like Brazil or a country like the Dominican Republic. They go into these countries that have large Black populations, and they are still finding either the white looking ones or the light skin looking ones. There's like this huge colorism undertone that like no one is quite attaching to this. And I'm not saying this because it's like, why they're not choosing a dark-skinned woman. I don't want those women harmed, but I think people need to see that they are doing this so they can access women that I guess in the States they don't feel they have the access to, right? Lighter skin for many people, for most people actually, is a certain class donation, right? So now, even though this is a person from another country, you're bringing her here as a lighter skinned person. You've moved up. You've done a little better. You got an exotic chick. You've done all of these things, and I think that the conversation needs to shift there. These people are not going to freaking Ghana, they're not going to Benin. They're not going to Jamaica, places where when you think of these populations, you just think of Black people. They're not going to Trinidad. They're going to these places where first people don't think of a Black population. Then they're making sure that they pick lighter skinned people. And that's not by accident. Like, it's all on purpose. But imagine getting a passport and all of that stuff so you can access your colorism preference. That is some fucking deep ass, thirst ass, crazy shit. And they're doing that. It is a problem. I actually tweeted about it. Let me find my tweet. That's what made me want to talk about it today, because I tweeted it and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that in my live, since I haven't seen a lot of people kind of talking about the colorism aspect of this whole ridiculous passport bros thing. When I did tweet it, someone interjected, and I don't mean that like in a bad way, but someone was saying how, well, they're going to East Africa. They're going to those countries. And I get what they were saying when they said that, but when we think of East Africa, we are not thinking of people with wide noses. There's featureism in this too. Wide noses, dark skin, certain texture hair. The East African femme is not the same looking person as what you think of when you think of a West African femme. So even with them going to East African countries, they are still trying to access a featureism or a colorism in the same exact way. The continent of Africa, just because they're going to Africa doesn't mean that they are not trying to access colorism or featureism. They're specifically going to East Africa for a reason, because the perception of East African people is something a little lighter, noses are slenderer, lips are smaller. It's a whole different thing. And we know what that is. So it's on purpose. They're trying to access colorism. Sade is saying, and then I guess the woman would feel that they owe subordination to these men as a thank you for taking these women out of poverty. That's a clearly unequal power balance. Definitely Sade. I don't know these women, so I don't want to talk on them. And then also, when you don't have certain privileges or opportunities, you might take different routes to get to it. So my critique isn't particularly for these women, but they know that they are a preference. They're not unaware of that. They know that they are, because they're a lighter skinned person, that more people would prefer them, or they would get first picks on these Black American men who come to these countries. They are aware of that, and they are using that. Now, does that use of that privilege of colorism or featureism free them from harm? Definitely not, but they're banking on that. They know how the system of colorism and featureism works, and they're using that as an access point to get out of whatever situation that they're in. So I want to make sure I add that, because it's not like they are completely removed from the system of colorism and that they are just victims of it. Do not live in these countries. I do not know all the things you would need to do to get out of these countries to come to the US to get access. But they know this is colorism. They know the system of featureism, and they're using it. We see that happen in the States all the time, where you see the women who have access because they're lighter skinned or because they have certain features or whatever, and they'll use it. Hypergamy works in that way. They will use it. Now, does that free them for the harm and all of that shit? Of course not. But they do use it because they understand how the system of colorism, featureism, desirability can work in their favor. There's a lot of colorism in that I wish people talked about more, and I wish that was a lot more obvious. There's a lot of things that are very obvious to me with colorism that lots of people don't notice, and I know it's because it's like a lot of work that I have done around colorism that has made this shit just like so obvious to me. But these are men leaving the country literally to access colorism and featureism in ways that they are unable to here. And then these are women who are benefiting from those systems. And I'm not saying they're fully benefiting, because if you're a man who has to find a partner in this predatory way, you're probably going to be harmful and abusive. But it's wild. So I'm going to just read the tweet that I wrote that inspired me doing this live. So the most obvious thing about passport bros that no one is talking about is the obvious colorism of all those men that participated in it. They don't go to black countries, and even countries they go to, they specifically target their lighter skinned women. How you in Brazil with such a large black population? I believe Brazil has one of the largest black populations like outside of Nigeria. Like that's how many black people are in the country of Brazil. And y'all all are coming back with lighter skinned people. It doesn't make any sense. How you in DR or the Philippines? Yes, the Philippines is another country that they go to often. If you look at colors of people in the Philippines, they're people that are as brown as me, but they are coming back with lighter skinned people. It's very deliberate and like very on purpose. And it's just because they want to access something that they feel they can access here, because women are a commodity. And it also makes me think of how, I said at the top of the stream that I'm working on a piece about monogamy and straightness and how it limits this. If we didn't prioritize romantic love, or if we didn't prioritize marriage in these huge ways, the amount of people that would not be harmed by shit like this because they want a wife, they're doing all of this harm because you don't feel like a whole person because you don't have a wife. That shit is wild and whack. Like, because you want a wife, you have to go to another country, delve in colorism and featureism, be a predator, find a partner, so you could come back to the States and feel like a whole man. Heteropatriarchy is disgusting. Like, it's gross. Desiree says, it's the idea that power, whiteness, money, patriarchy, etc., to access and eventually abuse vulnerable people that make me yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think a lot of the conversation has been about the rejection of Black American women, which for me, I don't give a fuck about. If you don't want me, I don't want you. Like, I don't care. There is a lot of misogynoir in that rejection. Totally get it. So the folks who talk about it, no shade, talk about it. It's misogynoir, but they're also trying to access these colorism preferences and these feature preferences. And I think that we should have a holistic conversation about all the harm involved with these fucking passport bros. So it's just interesting to me that they go to these countries where populations of Black people or darker skinned people, right? Because, people in the Philippines, Indians don't consider themselves Black, but darker skinned people exist, and they in large numbers. So you have to purposely file through all of the dark people to get to the light people in these countries, and that's who they find to bring back. It's just wild how ingrained a lot of this colonial fuck-centric shit is just like just in us, and it's just wild how much hetero monogamous patriarchy exists. Because why couldn't these men just be single? What's wrong with that? What is wrong with being a single adult? The fact that these men feel so not whole because they don't have a wife is weird. That shit is weird. That's fucking weird. It's not normal. Shit is weird. At least to me, someone who doesn't see that as the primary goal of my life. Like, there's so many ways for you to build community. And